Have you discovered the joy of designing with circles? Fun designs like this, or maybe a fun sleeve, ooh la la, and even making fun ruffled accents like this. Yes, all of these are circles. But how do you figure out how to make them? There's a super easy solution, and I'm here to tell you about it. Welcome to my channel. My name is Trisha. I'm the owner of Creative Costume Academy. I have found it my mission to share the easy pattern making tools with you so you are no longer afraid to try pattern making and making your own patterns and have fun along this journey. Today we're going to be talking about designing with circles and a super easy way in which to do that. So for those who are on my email list, my pattern news list, you all received a freebie earlier this month called the Circle Cheat Sheet. Circle Cheat Sheet is right here. I call it that because it makes designing with circles and making these different elements that you might have dreaming up in your head super easy to follow and figure out. I have my own cheat sheet here printed out on black ink because my printer doesn't want to collaborate. But if you didn't get your copy yet, hit the link below and you can get your own circle cheat sheet to follow along and try this method along with us. First of all, these are all circles and I'll show you kind of which one. So this is the ruffle, and you can see when I take it down, it is just a circle. So it's a circle and we've cut apart the inside and we've used that inside as our seam, and so it creates this really cool ruffle effect. And then this over here, this sleeve, is actually a circle where it's longer on one side and shorter on the other. So this was at the underseam and this was the top of the sleeve, so it gives it a really nice effect and hangs nicely as a sleeve. And if you haven't met her already, this is Susie, by the way. She's my wonderful model and assistant in helping me share about these wonderful pattern making techniques. And her skirt that she's wearing today is actually a double circle skirt. So this is two circles. So we have a circle over here, we have a circle over here, and I got even fancy and did like a high-low situation. She loves this skirt. So how do you know how to use, first of all, the circle cheat sheet if it's supposed to make it easier for you, and how to create these different designs? So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Grab your circle cheat sheet. If you don't have one already, get it down below, and let's go over to the table and I'll show you exactly how to use it. We are going to go through a couple of examples of how to use this circle cheat sheet, but let me explain a little bit of how it works. This was the circle that I had pinned on Susie that was used as a ruffle. So I would have stitched it from here. The inside circle would get stitched along the garment, and see how if you pull it straight, it creates a ruffle. And so that's how you can use circles to get ruffles. So in creating this, if I wanted to put a specific ruffle somewhere, I need to know the measurement of where I want to stitch this ruffle, where I want the ruffle to be. So in this case, I needed this for a different design, so I had a couple of these circles. So I had a measurement that actually went all along the neckline, and I did that measurement and I decided to do 4 circles along that neckline to get enough ruffle to go around where I want. So that's another thing to think about. But I used that measurement and I looked here on my measurement chart, and let's say it was 5 inches. I went across and I wanted to create a full circle skirt. So I'm going to go across the 5 inches, and that tells me 3/4 plus. And that little plus and those little minuses there are plus or minus within a 1/16 of an inch. So if you are to do the 3/4 of an inch, you might want to do like a pencil width more than 3/4 of an inch, and then that would get you the radius that you need. What does this mean? Here's the pattern for that ruffle. So it's a big circle with the circle in the middle. The circle in the middle is what we use the chart for. So when I created this, I folded a piece of paper in half and then in half again so I could see a quarter of a circle. Then from the corner, I measured out the measurement that I needed, got my waist radius at the top, and then I could make the length, whatever length I wanted at that time. And since I was doing a full circle, then I open it up and this is my pattern, this is my stitching line. So how does this work if we were going to do a skirt? So for a regular skirt, I'm going to show you, this is for a Susie size, so you can already see how big this can get. And once you know this method and really know it well, you can adapt to what works for you. I don't always do it this way, but I have a better understanding of how it works. So I'm going to show it to you this way so it makes the most sense. Now I already have one piece of paper folded once, and then we're going to fold it again so that we have 4 layers on top of each other. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So how this circle cheat sheet works is you want to go to the folded corner of your paper, and this is where the waist of our skirt is going to go. So you want to know the waist measurement, or the measurement of where you want your circle to go. In Susie's case, her waist measures 14 inches. So, and we want to show how to do a full circle skirt. So for 14 inches, I'm going to go across this sheet and see that it is 2¼ inches for a full circle. So I want to measure 2¼ inches from this point. So I'm going to do that now. And if you're not sure, so I have 1 inch, 2 inches, and then a little ½ inch. I'm going to put that right on the point of my fold, and I'm going to put a mark there. And then you can do it on the other side. So I'm going to do 2¼ here, and then you can kind of move the ruler around. So I've got it 2¼ there to get this circle. So once you have enough lines, you can connect them. And this is going to be your waist. Now, you say that's a really small waist. Of course, but remember, it's multiplied by 4. And when we do the full skirt, it's going to make a lot more sense. Now, from this point, this is really the only part where we have to use the circle cheat sheet, is where are you sewing this circle and what is the measurement in which it needs to be. The waistline or the stitching line if it was a ruffle. From this point, we want to determine how long do you want this skirt or this ruffle or whatever you're using the circle for to be. So in our case, let's say 10 inches. And so I'm just going to measure from this new waistline 10 inches. And do it in the same way that you're measuring 10 inches at different points from the new waistline. So again, once you have enough dash marks, you can connect the dots. Are we starting to see where the skirt is coming from? So lastly, there is no seam allowance on these measurements. We'll talk about that once I cut it. So if you wanted some seam allowance up here to add a waistband or to create a finish, then you want to add that seam allowance before you cut. I just added 1/4 inch so that you could see. And if you wanted to add, a hem allowance, you would do that as well. And then you can cut along this line. And you can cut along this line or wherever you added some hem allowance, you want to cut along that line. And look at what we have here. We have a full circle skirt. Now, this is for Susie, so our measurements are much smaller. And we do have to keep in mind that our stitching line, our waistband, would be down below. As you add seam allowance, it gets smaller and smaller, so be mindful of that. But this would easily fit onto a piece of fabric because it's Susie's size. If you were doing this for a real person, then you're going to want to add seams so that you can cut this out of fabric. So likely you will use half of this. But to get the full circle skirt look, you're going to want to do the full circle. So you would want to have, maybe this is your back and this is your front, and you have just a side seam here and a side seam here, and you have like a zipper or some kind of closure on one side. So you would want to add seam allowance here to this seam because I just cut it open. And you could also add more seams. You could add a seam here and do a color blocking situation. You could fold it and do a seam, so where that it was a different color like this. You can get really creative, but to get the actual circle shape, this is how we use the circle cheat sheet, and it really helps us out. And there is some other things like maybe raising a little bit in the back or the front, but even if you just did this, it's going to get you really close. So that's how we use it to do a full circle. Let's see if we just want a half circle skirt. So if we just wanted a half circle skirt, I can get away with just using a one piece of paper folded in half because I don't need the whole circle, but we'll still use the circle cheat sheet. And as another little tip, if this doesn't complicate things too much, you know how I cut that full circle in half and separated it, and I knew I had to add seam allowance. If you wanted to skip doing the full circle and just made yourself half of a circle and knew that you had to cut two, that would be another way that you could still use this. That measurement that we used to create that circle would still be the same. So let's use the same example, Miss Susie. We're going to make a half circle skirt instead of the full circle for her, and her waist measurement stayed the same. So we're still going into a 14-inch waist. So 14-inch is where we start. We're going to go over, but this time we're going to read the half circle number. So in this case, it's 4.5 minus. So slightly less, a 16th or so less of 4.5. That's a big difference from the 2.25 that we did for the full circle skirt. So that's where you don't have to do the math. This chart does it for you. So we want 4.5 or a little less. So we're going to do the same thing. So at the folded corner, I only have one fold this time on this example. I am going to do 4.5 or slightly less than 4.5. So I'm going to take 4.5 and I'm going to mark on one side, and then I'm going to do 4.5. I'm going to mark on the other side, and then we're going to do the same thing where we get our little hash marks. Once you have enough of those, you can connect the dots. Then from here, we can decide how long we want this little skirt to be. So I'm thinking maybe just 9 inches, maybe 8 inches. Let's go 8 inches. So I'll mark 8 inches here. Again, once you have your dots, you can connect the dots. And there we have it. So again, you would want to add your hem allowance. You would want to add your seam allowance up here at the waist. Let's do that quickly. Once you have that, then you're ready to cut. We're going to go ahead and cut this out. And there we have it. So this is just half a circle skirt. We could have started like how we did for the full circle skirt, where we ended up with a full circle. You could still start that same way if that makes more sense visually for you. But since our end result was only the half circle skirt, we would only use half of that circle because that's the radius that we chose to use. So what this actually is telling me is I would put a seam here so that this and this could be my side seam. So this could be my front and this could be my back. So when you sew them together, it's a half circle skirt. And I'll show you what these look like. Miss Susie loves to model. So we can just use this one pattern piece. In this case, add your seam allowance to the side so that you can sew it together and have an opening for your zipper or whatever closure that you would use if this was for a skirt. And again, you can get creative, adding seams, adding different colors, putting, more to this, but you know that if you sew a front and a back like this, it's going to fit into the waist that you're looking for, and it's going to give you the fullness of what you're looking for, all without doing any math. Here is the full circle skirt. This is the one we just made together, and Susie is our lovely model for this. And here's the half circle skirt. So you can see big difference, but really simple to make that difference when you're drafting the pattern. And it really is that easy. You can get fancy with both of these. We just turned under and top stitched this. You can add a waistband, you can add different seams and do color blocking. But to get that initial shape, that initial circle, you use the circle cheat sheet. So that is a very quick glimpse at how valuable and really easy it can be using your circle cheat sheet to make fun circle designs with your garments. I hope you liked that. If you did, please make sure to like, subscribe, share with your sewing friends, and turn on those notifications so you never miss a video that comes out. If you didn't already get your own circle cheat sheet, do know that link is down below to where you can get your own. And for everyone on my pattern news list, they get a freebie every month. I do a freebie in the first week of the month, the first newsletter that goes out. So if you haven't already jumped onto our pattern news list, that link is also down below for you. And if you are ready, you know you want to start learning about pattern making, I hope you will join us at Pattern Making Academy. It's a wonderful place to get started. We start you at the very beginning, learning those foundational principles. Then we dive into really fun pattern designs and make it easy and fun to learn pattern making. And you can find that link down below at learnpatternmaking.com. And if you're just not quite sure, we have a free class that you can try it out, learn a little bit more about my method and where I've learned all this stuff from. And you can find that down below at the free pattern masterclass. That's all we have for you this week. Thank you for joining. We'll see you next time. Right, Susie?